What does Brent Venables do for an encore? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We break down the game we all love each and every day with you. And in recent weeks, that means predictions for the 2023 season right here. Let's get to it. Oklahoma's final performance in the Big 12. And we talk about Venables as an encore. Well, Sooner fans hope that it's nothing like the first performance because that was dismal. It was beyond atrocious compared to what the standard has been for a long, long time at Oklahoma as one of the great programs in college football history, and certainly under Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley. 6-7. That meant 3-6 in the Big 12, a bowl loss to Florida State in which they actually may have turned in their best performance of the season. All right, turn the page. And this could be a big bounce back year for Oklahoma for a number of reasons. One would be Dillon Gabriel staying upright and in the pocket, making plays on the move and in the pocket for Oklahoma after 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and the offense completely fell apart when he was not on the field. When Dillon Gabriel was on the field, 37 points per game, 510 yards per game. Let's make no mistake. This is not Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, or Jalen Hurts, anybody of that ilk. This is not Caleb Williams either, but he's mobile. He has experience. He's reliable. He's a good quarterback. He's a top 15 to 25 quarterback in college football. And this season, fortunately for Oklahoma, if he falters for whatever reason or gets injured again, they will not have the disaster that they had at the quarterback position in Davis, Bevel, and others in 2023. Jackson Arnold's a 5-star, and he's probably not ready, but still, a lot of Sooner fans would like to see him unleash that cannon arm. Let's look at the running backs, and those guys are ready after stellar freshman seasons. Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk both gained 100 yards against Florida State in the 35-32 bowl loss. They are the 1-2 combination, and they've got capable backs behind them in Marcus Major. And then you also have the incoming freshman from North Carolina, Smothers, who for a lot of teams would probably get some early carries. Not necessarily for OU is he needed. What is needed is a number one receiver. Marvin Mims moves on, and I don't see a CeeDee Lamb. I don't see a Hollywood Brown on this roster. They're decent at wide receiver, but they don't have that guy. And if there is going to be that guy, is it Andrell Anthony at Michigan? I really don't think so. He could not start or get much playing time for a pretty marginal wide receiver group in Ann Arbor. It could be Jalil Farouk, who led the team in receiving this past season. Drake Stoops is the reliable guy in the slot, and there's a deep room at wide receiver, but again, nobody's proven to be that guy. The offensive line has been one of the staples in Oklahoma football for years and years and years, but specifically under Lincoln Riley, as they at one point were named the top offensive line in the country. A decent performance despite the 7-loss season, a decent performance last season. They do bring back and bring in through the transfer portal 147 career starts, the most notable Walter Rouse coming in from Stanford with 39 career starts. Now the problem. Defense. In the first 3 games of the season, it looked like, hey, maybe Brent Venables is working his magic with pretty marginal personnel. And I got to tell you, after giving up 30 points in 3 games, hey, things looked good. Now, that was UTEP, Kent, and Nebraska. Then they got to Big 12 play, and it was ugly. Consider this. Even with those first 3 performances against 3 marginal, being kind, offenses, 122nd in the nation in yards given up per game, 90th in points given up, and that's after giving up those 30 points in the first 3 games. After that, they gave up 213 yards rushing per game in the Big 12. They had 13 sacks in those first 3 games. They had 15 the final 10 games of the season. This is what's disappointing. I get the argument that Brent Venables did not have his guys. However, it was his team. And you got to work with what you've got. He had his incoming freshman class. Obviously, the impact there is going to be minimal. However, if Brent Venables is clearly or one of the best in the business and arguably the best in the business, I got to think and was expecting him to upgrade the defense just based on sheer ability to scheme and work through guys' techniques and teach them better fundamentals and better eyes on the football and across the board just be able to teach and implement a better system. Now, we know the system's complicated and it takes a few years, so much is expected in terms of an upgrade. And Brent Venables has actually stated this will be a huge upgrade for Oklahoma this season. So he's put the pressure on himself because he says what we're going to see this year completely different than what we saw in 2022. Now, some of that is going to come up front through the transfer portal. Dason McCullough off the edge at Indiana was a freshman All-America. He's a dynamic player. Rondell Bothroyd from Wake Forest, 14 sacks the past 2 seasons for good Wake teams. Davin Sears comes in from the group of 5 in Texas State. Leading tackler Danny Stutzman's back, 126 tackles, and Brent Venables has said about the linebacking core, it's the heart and soul of this team. Another nice addition to the defense is Reggie Pearson from Texas Tech. He can flat out hit. He had 55 tackles, but my goodness, most of those just flat out hurt. He is a wrecking crew at free safety, a guy that has not played much football, but may be the impact player on the team. Peyton Bowen, the 5-star coming in at safety. They'll probably ease him into it, but don't be surprised if we see a lot of Peyton Bowen by games 3, 4, and 5 in the season. And speaking of that 2023 season, it's a bit of a cakewalk. The Big 12 is competitive top to bottom, so there are no give-me's like there are in the other conferences. However, there are also no elite teams. There's just a bunch of marginal teams. There's a lot of 50th best teams in the country, 40th best teams in the country in the Big 12. And that's what Oklahoma's looking at. Let's look at the schedule. They don't have any heavyweights non-conference for a second consecutive season. Not even a brand name like Nebraska this season to deal with because of the cancellation with Georgia. So what we've got is Arkansas State, SMU, and then the game against Kevin Wilson's Tulsa team. So they should be 3-0 right out of the gate. Then they go to Cincinnati, and the Bearcats should be taking a large step back after the departure of Luke Fickell. Iowa State's been a thorn in the side in recent years. They did lose that game in Ames last year. Okay, Texas is the best team on the schedule on paper. But other than that, look at all these games. They actually will be a favorite unless things drastically change for the entire month of October into November, past the Texas game with UCF. Kansas will be difficult, and Oklahoma State on the road, but there's no gauntlet here. There are no definite elite teams. It's not a difficult schedule. It's got to be one of the weaker schedules in the Power 5. Again, as we look at the possible losses and the ranking of the most likely losses from top to bottom, and it's Texas. Number 1, by far, the most likely loss for Oklahoma, of course, a neutral site game at the Cotton Bowl. Then after that, we've got a group of games, and don't go crazy over who we've got at number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 even. You could go the first 3 for sure, maybe the first 4, I would say, meaning BYU, Oklahoma State, Kansas, TCU, generally the same likelihood of OU tripping up in any of those games. Then you've got UCF at Cincinnati, and then Iowa State. The history's there, but Iowa State coming off a dismal season. It should be better on offense, have to be better on offense, but we're talking about the best defense statistically in the Big 12, and they still went 2-7 in conference play. SMU, West Virginia, and then, yes, the non-conference games there at Tulsa and Arkansas State should all be pretty easy wins. There's about 4 to 5 games that are no doubt wins for Oklahoma there, and we size it all up. I don't believe this is a 10-2 team. If you just said, Mark, look at Oklahoma, are they a 10-2 team? No. Now, put together Oklahoma versus this schedule, Sooners trip up against Texas, and they lose another game. That's what it looks like. They could win every game and go 12-0. They are not the type, they don't have the talent nor the consistency, of course, to do that. But I project them to lose to Texas, and they could win that game. And then other than that, they're going to trip up. Now they could trip up twice and go 9-3, but I'm going to go 10-2 for OU and 7-2 in a huge bounce-back season for Brent Venables. Might be a little bit of fool's gold heading to the SEC in 2024. Your thoughts down below about Oklahoma this season and what the Sooners will deliver. Your prediction, we would love to see it right here at the Voice of College Football.